Today we're talking about combi boilers. Now I've been getting a lot of questions about them. What are they? How do they work? And should I get one for my house? Now I'm going to do this as a three-part series. First part's just going to be an overview of combi boilers in general. Second part is going to be about this particular unit behind me, which is the Navien NFC-H, which is a fire tube style combi boiler. And the third part, we're going to be doing maintenance. So if this is something that you're definitely interested in, I would definitely recommend watching those other two videos as well. So let's get to it. Let's talk about the inner workings. What is a combi boiler? So a combi boiler is just short for combination boiler. So it's pretty much a high efficiency boiler and a tankless water heater crammed together inside of one cabinet. And how that works is we have the boiler side, and then we have down here is the domestic heating side. So just so you know, the boiler water and your domestic water never mix together. That's the whole point of this little heat exchanger down here. So when you turn your faucet on, the boiler then sends hot water into that heat exchanger. The domestic water is going to travel on one side, and the boiler water is going to travel on the other side. And as they're kind of passing by each other, you're going to get that heat transfer. You never want to be mixing boiler water and your domestic water because you're going to get sick, and not only that, but they're at two different pressures, so they're just never going to work properly. All right, now that we know how this thing works, let's talk about the pros and the cons. Let's get right to the cons. There's a couple of them. This thing is not perfect. So, at least my opinion, one of the biggest downsides to something like this would be your gallons per minute. Now I have a big boy behind me, which is a 240, which is going to give me 5.5 gallons per minute. For me, I don't have a problem. I have a 2.5 bath. With 4 people in my house, I've never had a problem with running out of hot water. The problem that people are going to see is if you have a large soaking tub, or if you have one of those big shower heads that I've been seeing a lot. Definitely keep an eye on how many gallons per minute that's going to be. Typically a soak tub is going to be about 6 to 8 gallons per minute. So with something like that, really what's going to happen is it's going to throttle your water down. So it's not going to be coming out as quickly, and it's going to take a little bit longer for it to fill up. It'll still do the job, it's just going to take a little bit longer. In a big shower head like that, that's going to be a bigger issue because the water pressure is going to actually drop. So if you do have those big shower heads, I probably really consider not going with something like this. Then it comes to our second con, which is when this thing is heating your domestic hot water, it switches to heating, switches from heating your house to heating your domestic hot water. They don't work at the same time. So if you're taking a very long shower, or if you have a lot of people that are taking multiple showers back to back, it is not heating your house. So the problem with that is you're gonna have problems heating your house. I've never had that problem, so I don't know what kind of people you have living in your house that like to take hour showers, but they're out there. So with that being said, when this unit is not heating your house, when it's trying to heat that hot water, that also goes into people that have recirc lines. So I know a lot of times when we're ripping out a boiler and a indirect tank, or even like a 75 gallon water heater, they usually have a recirculation line on it. So how a recirculation line works is there's pretty much a second pipe that goes out there and is constantly recirculating that hot water to keep that water nice and hot. So you turn your faucet on, you got hot water instantly. So with that constantly heating that hot water in that recirc line, once again, it's not heating your house. So if you are going to do something like that, it's absolutely possible. We've done it quite a few times. You have to wire that pump into the boiler. So the boiler is going to kind of do a test. It's going to see what temperature that water is, and if it's warm enough, it's going to just kind of leave it be. If the temperature has dropped, it's going to quickly warm that line back up and then go back to doing whatever it was doing beforehand. So if you do have a recirc line, keep that in the back of your head. Make sure that they wire it up properly, because I've seen a lot of times they'll have a recirc line and they'll just run that pump 24/7, and they're going, why is my heat not working? So we have that. Another thing is, because this is just like a tankless water heater, they do not like hard water. They do not like, if you have really bad water quality in your house, this is a bad choice. I would definitely recommend conditioning your water first before getting something like this, because you're going to have to do a lot of maintenance on it. You're going to have to constantly flush this thing out. And then also, if you just forget to do maintenance, this thing becomes a giant paperweight within 3 to 4 years. I've seen it happen a lot. I do not recommend running really bad water on this. So if you're on a well and you're not treating it, don't get this, period. The other thing is your flue pipe. Usually when people are going from a standard boiler up to something like a high efficiency, you're going to need to redo the flue pipe. Your cast iron boiler is going to be using a metal flue. High efficiency is going to be using a PVC like this, or a polypropylene, which is that gray pipe. You have to remember, this thing's got a vent outside. So if it's in an area that you physically can't, especially if you see a lot of townhouses and stuff like that, where your heating system's in the center of the house, it's completely impossible to run a new flue outside. You got to reconsider and try to do something else. So, I mean, most of the time, it's not an issue. If anything, they're down in a basement, at least around here in the Midwest. You can just pop it out the side and you're perfectly fine. So, also, with the last and final, in my opinion, it's kind of a smaller one. There's going to be a lot more demand on one unit. So instead of kind of splitting up that load up to like a boiler and a 50-gallon water heater, this thing's doing both of it. So in the wintertime, this thing's running a lot. Let's talk about the pros. Here's a couple of them. So my biggest pro for this is the size. This is kind of a small package. What is that, the old saying, big things in small packages? This is it right here. Now you can see we're inside of a tiny little closet right now. I didn't have a lot of room to work with when I was renovating my house, so something like this was perfect for me, because there was going to be no way I was going to be able to fit a boiler and a 50-gallon water heater. That was just not going to happen. So something like this, that's only 18 inches deep, or about 3 feet tall, doesn't take up a whole lot of room. It really just kind of frees up my space in here. Now I have plenty of room to store other things. So the huge benefit if you're trying to save some space, because I see a lot of times you're going to have your boiler and your 50-gallon water heater shoved inside of a closet, and it's going to be just about impossible to work on either of those. So if you want to try to save some space, or you just don't have a lot of space to work with and you want to put a boiler in your house, this would be perfect for something like that. And the other thing about going with a high efficiency boiler is now you're getting the efficiency bump. Standard boiler, you're probably at about 60% to 70% efficiency. If you've got a draft induced, you're closer to 80. And then we're talking about water heaters. A natural draft, you're about 60 to 70% efficient, while a power vent, you're closer to, like 70, 75%. If you've got a tankless water heater, it's going to be pretty close to something like this. Not going to be a huge bump in energy efficiency. Or if you have a high efficiency boiler already, we're talking, like I said, it's like having a high efficiency boiler with a tankless water heater crammed together. I mean, same efficiency there. Another good benefit with going with a high efficiency is the fact that you can vent this thing out the sidewall. Now, I know a lot of the times, at least here in the Midwest, everything's down in your basement, and you're living in a 2-story house. So trying to vent something through the roof would be just about impossible. Something like this, you can just punch out the sidewall, do a little candy cane up, and away you go. So that's going to be a huge benefit for certain people. Now, another benefit, when we're talking about flues, is because we have one unit, we're going to have less flues outside. Now, as you can see, I got my intake and my exhaust. If you have 2 units, you should have 2 more exhausts. So we got 4 exhausts outside. Pretty simple math there. Hopefully you guys are keeping up with this. So now that we have 1 unit, we have less pipes outside. I know a lot of people are concerned about the looks. They don't like a bunch of pipes sticking out the side of their house. So it's a benefit for certain people. Maybe not a huge benefit, but it's something to think about. The other thing would be maintenance. Because this is 1 unit, you're going to have less maintenance. So instead of having to do work on 2 separate units, it's going to then just be 1 unit and kind of taken care of all at one time. Now let's move into kind of applications. Who should be using stuff like this? So if you're like me and you got a small little closet, this is perfect. I would highly recommend for you to get something like this. The other thing is like new builds. If you're, you know, a lot of times I've been seeing a lot of people, they've got the in-floor heat in their basement, and then, you know, you gotta heat that water, and you also gotta have domestic hot water as well. So why not hit, you know, two birds, one stone, as they say. Other thing is if you have in-floor heat. Now, if you have a standard boiler, boiler is going to be running at about 180 BTUs. This can modulate up and down. I don't, well, like I said, let's back up a little bit. So a boiler is going to run at 180. I have in-floor heat. Your in-floor heat needs to be at about 120. To make that work, is you would have to put a mixing valve. So it's going to mix the cold water in with the hot water as it's kind of going around, so that it takes that 180 and turns it down to 120 in layman's terms. I don't want to get too complicated with that. So that's now an added device you have to put on there. Something like this, I can just set it to 120 and it's going to pump out 120 right from the boiler. And like I was talking about before, the lower we can get that temperature, the more energy efficient it's going to be. So why something like me with in-floor heat, this has been awesome. I don't have to have all that wasted, you know, gas that's just pretty much going right out the flue. I can put that right into my water. I'm going to be saving a lot on my gas bill every month. Another benefit to these is you can cascade them. So how that works is you have your main boiler, and then you have a bunch of other boilers stacked right next to it, and they all work together. So if you only have like a small little load of, you know, hot water, this is usually more on the boiler side than anything. What you can do is just run that one boiler if you're just trying to heat a small space. And then if you have, like, you're trying to heat an entire apartment complex, you can run them all together at the same time, and they kind of alternate, so they have similar run times. So big benefit if you've got, you know, something, a larger scale job or something like that. You can common vent these. So how that works is you have just pretty much a large flue pipe going outside, all the exhaust go into that one pipe, and then you have another pipe that goes out, all the intakes go into the other pipe, and they all kind of communicate and work together. The other thing that I want to notate with something that is high efficiency, when you have a high efficiency appliance, is going to condense the flue gases, and you're going to get condensation coming out of it. Now that condensation that's coming out is acidic. If it is dumping into a copper pipe, it's going to eat away that copper pipe. Is dumping into cast iron, it's going to eat away that cast iron. I've seen a lot of older houses that are cast iron and aluminum, or sorry, copper will do that to aluminum as well. So you would absolutely need a neutralizer. I recommend doing a neutralizer across the board. Anytime you install something like this, I would recommend doing a neutralizer no matter what. So if you got your installer coming out to put one in there, definitely make sure that he's including that with the install, especially if you've got an older house. That can be really bad. So when it comes to maintenance to something like this, this is a fire tube boiler. At least the heat exchanger is a fire tube. They say, I don't really know how much I believe them, that you can go quite a few years without doing any maintenance. Me personally, I do it every single year. It's more or less just to kind of see how everything's looking. Every time that I've torn it apart, it's looked pretty great. There's maybe just like a little bit of buildup inside of there. It's not bad. Definitely, when it comes to the heat exchanger style, I would definitely recommend going with a fire tube. So it's just pretty much a big cylinder looking thing with a burner on the top. There's different styles that you can get. This is what I would definitely recommend, because you're gonna have less maintenance compared to the other ones where you should be doing it every single year. And then on the domestic side is really going to come down to your water quality. So this is very similar to a tankless water heater. A tankless water heater, you need to flush out every single year with a cleaner and just kind of run it through. I'll be going over that in the third video. And I would recommend doing that every 6 months to a year, depending on your water quality. I'm on a well. I do it every 6 months. Usually doesn't come out too bad, but it is absolutely critical that you do maintenance on this, or it will become a giant paperweight like I was talking about before. All right, guys, thank you for sticking around. Hopefully, well, I mean, if you're listening to me right now, you watch this whole video. I appreciate you guys sticking around. If you guys have any questions, any concerns, or anything that I forgot, let me know. I mean, I'm not perfect. I try to think about everything I possibly can for something like this. Like I said, this is what I have in my own house. I work on these. I've been doing this for 12 years in the field. I've taken every class that Navien offers and every other brand offers, so I know these pretty well in and out. So if you have any questions that I forgot to bring up, let me know. If there's something that bothers you about this video, let me know too. Like I said, I'm not perfect. There's things I feel we can fix. So thank you guys for watching. See you on the next one.